Carson, Leno, Fallon. Now, it's Wine Talks with Paul K.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today about to have a conversation with the famed Jessica Kogan. Introductions in just a moment. Wine Talks, of course, available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, Spotify, wherever you hang out for podcasting. Hey, have a listen to a conversation with Rudolph Frère-Jean Taittinger. Yes, the famed family Taittinger, but he has his own brand called Frère-Jean. Frère, also in French. He has French Bloom, which is a dynamic brand of non-alcoholic sparkling wine from the Champagne region. So I'll listen to that, as well as Vito Lafata. My first conversation with Vito Lafata in Temecula. He's a Sicilian from Long Island. So I asked if I should be, worried as to how this conversation might go. But no, he decided to soiree into the wine business in Temecula, which is a Southern California wine town. It's a fabulous conversation on the philosophy and history of his family getting into wine. So listen to that. But not while we're here. We're here to catch up with an old friend, Jessica Kogan, who is the CEO of HSP Brands, as well as Connect the Dots Digital Marketing, and an old friend. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again. Last time we saw each other anyway, it was up in Napa Valley or Sonoma County for a conversation about digital marketing, and then we spoke a little bit after that. But you moved on from where you were at when we spoke. You're at Connect the Dots, and found that fascinating. A woman-owned digital agency that does exactly what?
What exactly do we do? But first, I want to get into what we do.
Question,
I want to first talk about the last time I saw you, which was you had just sold your business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're both in different places, and I want to know how you are doing, and I will tell you everything about Connect the Dots.
Well, thanks for asking that. We're happy on a number of fronts. A little bit of freedom. I don't have to worry about making sure the packages are out there. We have enough boxes. The inners and saying that the newsletter get printed. Is the website working? Is the chat bar working? So that relief has been quite rewarding. However, the time still seems like it's not enough. Producing this podcast takes quite a lot of energy. We produce everything ourselves. I organize it myself, and looking to change that. But there's a certain amount of envy because I loved the mix, but at the same time, I don't miss the stress. I think I told you earlier off camera. Often at 5 o'clock during the week, I would go, I'd take a deep breath because I knew my staff was going home, and the events of the day couldn't occur past that. Just to catch up the next morning at 8 o'clock and start over again. So I don't miss that, but I do miss the sort of hustle and bustle of that industry.
Right. I mean, you were shipping every day, right?
Every day,
and what was the biggest struggle for you? Like now that you have left, and I mean, aside the missing the hustle and bustle, but like, what was it that at the end of the day, you're just like,
frankly, if you were to listen in on a conversation with Sandra and I, and Sandra being the compliance officer, and we were shipping into 42 states and paying the taxes, and I think every businessman would say this, that it's the workforce, it's the unknown part, the human part of work, which you never know what's going to happen. And so we had a couple of disability suits against us. We had we got a bill from Louisiana. Can you imagine this? Almost a year after we sold, we got a bill from Louisiana for $13,000 in past due taxes, which was wrong. But there's stress in like receiving that letter and then trying to solve the problem.
Yeah.
But I think the human factor, at the same time that we're very proud that we launched a lot of careers in our tenure, and we got people on their feet, there was a lot of stress when it came to make sure your employees are happy and moving the needle for them. So,
do you think that's a California thing?
Well, I think there's a general issue with labor right now in the country, but yes, California does propagate its own issues. Well, look at the $20 an hour minimum wage here. I mean, I heard an interesting comment from somebody saying that though Panera was excluded from this because they make fresh bread, which is a bizarre, trigger. They've also realized that they're not paying that wage now, so they're probably going to lose employees to the McDonald's of the world that are paying the $20.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It's totally aside from what we're really going to talk about, but I want to talk about wage for a moment, which is my older daughter, who's in college, is also an EMT. And did you know that the starting hourly of an EMT is $18.50 an hour?
Are you serious? $18? So
And
10% less than
the average.
flipping burgers?
Exactly. And these are people who go through some serious training at level 1 to save your life.
That's amazing.
Isn't
that's a problem.
It's a real problem. And I just was shocked and stunned. That's what AMR, which is the largest ambulance response, privately held company in the U.S. That's what they pay.
And they could save a life, right? They could save a life at a moment's notice. And they, but if you're flipping a burger, I mean, that's,
I mean, it's so hard to understand that when you are in your most desperate moment, that the service that is being provided to you is you're not paying people like a living wage who have to get all these expensive certifications to save your life. It's just fascinating to me because with HSP, our omni-channel events company, we pay $25 an hour. And that was recently changed because of the gig economy reversal of what happened in California with the Gavin Newsom bill, which essentially forced, Instacart, DoorDash, all of the gig economy businesses to convert their contract labor force to employees.
It shows you that legislating a problem is not the solution. Like, it doesn't work that way. And anytime you do that, it creates a new problem. And you have to let the marketplace solve itself. And in my opinion, is in general, and I flipped burgers at a beach hut and when I was going through high school and in my first year in college, that was the stepping stone. I got to work with people. I learned how to cook.
Yeah.
I still use that training today from Mr. Salentino. But, you wanted to get out. You're like, okay, I'm ready for something new. And that was, of course, not a career.
Yeah.
You don't flip and fry French fries for a career. You use it to move on, like any sous chef or line cook would do in a fancy restaurant. Mm-hmm. They don't want to be a line cook.
I'm with you. I mean, I always, but I have this debate often. There's good regulation, and then there's just ridiculous regulation. And I think we can both agree in the adult beverage industry, the regulation is just sometimes just beyond the pale of understanding and borders on just, anti-competitive everything.
Well, for years, I wasn't allowed. I mean, literally wasn't allowed to go to the WSWA meeting, which for the listeners is the Wholesale Spirits and Wines of America. I had to use a fake card, to get in.
Did you?
Yeah. I went to a couple of meetings and a couple of guys knew who I was and they're like, no problem. But, you literally, because the Wholesalers of America are the ones that keep the noose around these, about the state legislatures about alcohol, that have controlled all these years. And it was fascinating. I felt pretty proud of myself. You're not allowed to come. So I actually meant like I was doing something that was causing a problem.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. We were at the Prohibition Museum in Savannah, Georgia, a couple of weeks ago, and I learned a few things. But one of the things that my friends didn't understand is that during Prohibition, you could drink, you just couldn't produce it commercially, and you couldn't sell it commercially. But you could make all the wine at home you wanted to, and have all the parties you wanted to. But the fact that now there's 50 versions of Prohibition do you really think there's a chink in the wall for solving that problem?
I do think over time it will be because, as you know, my area of expertise is digital, and it's not. We tend to think, you and I tend to think of digital in the adult beverage industry just as direct to consumer, and that is how the wholesalers of America have tried to, box DTC in. But it's just that dragon is so much bigger now, especially since COVID. Consumers in this country, they engage with information digitally. And that change in behavior is absolutely going to eventually change the dynamics of how distribution and wholesale work in general. And it's not just the supplier shipping direct to consumer. It's way bigger than that. It's just way bigger than that in my mind.
It seems, and I made this note, but since you are on the tech side of this, you probably don't know this, but I did own a software company for years in the early days of database work.
In Cold Fusion?
No, it was good. Yeah. Oracle. Unfortunately, it was not that big. But we were on the streets all over the country selling software, and it always seems like, particularly back then, that the industry was always in its infancy. In other words, there's something on the horizon that was going to make what you're doing obsolete. And that has just accelerated even faster. In other words, what you do today is not going to work tomorrow, and so on and so on. But I think with the advent of digital marketing, AI, on the rest of it, that's going to happen even faster. And to keep up and try to understand is, I don't know what the solution is. I've been working on AI myself because I know that it's going to support what I'm doing. And I've been listening to all the seminars and all the onboarding seminars I can go to understand it better and how it affects us. But certainly in your side of the world.
But Paul, you've been doing AI since you started direct to consumer. I mean, you've been getting data from, any information that you get digitally and that you analyze is some degree of AI, whether it's manual or automated. You are determining information based on data. That's the same AI. What we're talking about today is supercomputing, right? Like, is the supercomputing piece. But you've been doing it for 20 years, AI.
I suppose that's the viewpoint. I could accept that. I mean, we, to a certain extent, now machine learning has helped a little bit understand, take some of that. And I wonder what the threat of that is, really. You wonder if it knows too much of what you're trying to do or not do. But certainly from, like, for instance, with the podcast, I take the podcast audio, I shove it into this AI system, and it produces these amazing articles, talking points, questions to ask. It digs into your history to find out what you've done and writes an article for me. Well, that saves me a lot of time and headache and produces more content. Okay, great. Now everybody can produce content even faster than they did before. So what does that mean to us as consumers? Are we going to receive that much more messaging because it's that much faster, and we can produce it? We can put it up on LinkedIn or eBay. LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram or the next platform.
So I think that what you just brought up to me is like such an opportunity to actually build a startup, which is the consolidation of that information. So yes, like, everybody is playing with AI to the extent that it can write you articles. It can take information off spoken word and come up with, better ways of saying something, and or, producing social media bites that are really, that help market your brand. But I think ultimately the volume of content and volume of information, it was already overwhelming for consumers. It is now triply overwhelming. And eventually we're just going to see ways in which that information is, managed better to consumers. And, those are called influencers right now. But I think it's just something much bigger than that.
Has to be, because I can't. The influencer thing just befuddles me. I don't get it.
I think influencers are something that have worked well for like Gen Z. But I think as they as they get older, I think that they will move away from that and see that influencers are a limitation and not don't really help them actually see the world. So I just think that everything right now is in flux. Everything is changing like more than it ever has. AI is an important factor in everything we're doing. But let's be honest, digital is our future. Digital is where we are going to be. Does it mean that the in-person chatting and talking and engaging is not going to? Oh,
Must be colder there. It's freezing so much. So I'm going to go back early days of Facebook when Chris Brogan, who I think was one of the geniuses, Gary Vee was just starting, and Chris Brogan wrote the book called Trust Agents, which was sort of the concept of what our job is digitally, which has never changed really. But one of the things back in those days was that Facebook at that time was really a social network. You didn't really leave Facebook. If you were on Facebook to play with your friends and talk and chat, and everybody that was in your network got your message, you weren't going to leave and go buy something. That just wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And that's far from the truth today. It's almost why you go to Facebook, besides because you don't get to hear from your friends anymore anyway, and you buy stuff. And the numbers, I don't think the numbers have changed that much, and maybe it is a Gen Z thing, but the idea was 80% of the people that were engaging with ads were influenced by those ads enough to do something. In other words, they'd rather get a recommendation from their friend on Facebook or Instagram than to bother going and research their own purchasing requirements to see what they wanted. They would just take the influencers, now what they call influencers, idea. And I think that's changing a little bit. I think you're right. This patch here is from my father's group called Les Amis de Vin, which was...
Les Amis de Vin.
Yeah, right. It was a huge countrywide group. And my dad had a chapter at his wine shop, and you would dress to the nines. You would go to the meetings. Robert Mondavi would speak. Dan Balzer would speak. Dan Berger would speak. And I think that experiential part of life is coming back. And I think it's because there's too many messages to solve.
Yes, 100 million %. And first of all, that identity, is so beautiful. Like that patch is gorgeous. It is absolutely stunning. Like that is beautiful artwork. I mean, it's the gold thread. It's beautiful. But yes, this is the thing. We need human connection. We want human connection. The difference is that digital is how we are going to actually find our way offline, if that makes any sense. In order for us to find community, we actually have to find the community online to get us to the offline ramp. A specific example. You are online, you are researching you move to a new city and you want to find a park to take your dog to, right? You don't know where a great park is. Where do you find out where to take your dog to a great park? Tell me where you would go.
The phone book. Okay.
It used to be, Paul, that you would go next door to the neighbor and introduce yourself and say, "Hi, I just moved here. Does anybody in this neighborhood have dogs? Where do you take your dogs?" Right? Or you'd ask the real estate person or whatever. But today, what people do when they are searching to find a way to, I call it the off-ramp to the physical connection, they go online to find that information. And the reality, that's like a very simplistic example. Take that all the way to how do I wash my deck for the summer? How do I make my deck ready for the summer? Where does a person go? Do they call a friend? Do they text a friend? What are they most likely to do?
That's a good question.
They're most likely to open a search tool on their phone and search, how do I clean my deck? What happens in that moment, right, is they get the information and then they find out the subgroups of people who are experts in cleaning their decks. And then they find out at Home Depot they can buy XYZ. And then they find out that there's a group in their neighborhood that's like really into like celebrating, like building and making decks. And that it is counterintuitive for people who've grown up in who are 50 and above, but 50 and below. This is how they make connections into the physical world. They go online. And so that is, to me, the big distinguishing factor of change. And so if we accept that that is the change, and that to reach people, we have to be digitally minded to bring them to us physically.
I think that's clearly right on. So here's one of the headwinds that
yeah.
In fact, your example's amazing because I was just at an auction and there's a lamp I want to purchase. And since this will air after Sandra, my wife, can watch it, she'll not know I'm doing this.
Sandra.
But it needs to be cleaned. It's a very nice French piece. And I didn't even leave the building. And I Googled how to clean crystal lamps, crystal in general. It looked like somebody smoked in the house. It had a brown tint to it. So I agree with that. But here's the part that I juggle with and I get confused with, and I used to drive me nuts as a marketeer, the top 20 best microphones, the top 20 best deck cleaners, the top 20 cleaning for lamps, the top 20. It's a ruse. That's affiliate marketing that people are paying for. And I used to run these sort of rants about that idea. And so I did it the other day. I don't know why I did this, but what's the top USB microphone for podcasting? And it sent me this Audio Technica thing. I sent it back in an hour. I put it back on Amazon Stream. It was so bad. Because when you click on that best top 20 and you look at the URL and it's a mile long, that's an affiliate-based deal. They paid for that position most likely and are be getting commission, of course. So how do we get to the organic version of that response? How do we know that it's legit, that my friend really recommended that dog park?
So it's really an interesting question. And that's where I feel that there's a lot of innovation to be had, and where a lot of change can be made, right? I think everybody recognizes, whether they know it consciously or unconsciously, that at some level, when you do search on, in your browser, that what's being displayed to you is not a from the heart recommendation. So it does require, a deeper level of engagement. I do believe that there's going to be applications out there that are going to build trust, that are going to be like centers of excellence of information. But I will say, do you remember Craigslist? Do you remember do you remember
it's still around?
There's
it's gone,
Craigslist,
really.
Craigslist is still around. They're owned by eBay, but like going back to that stage of going to a place where you are seeing information that is posted by a community. And so I think that we are ripe for a moment for disruption, for community-driven applications. That doesn't mean that digital advertising is going to go, pear-shaped at all. It's absolutely there. The point is that if we understand that shoppers, customers, people their first point of engagement is going to be digital to find information, whether it's to find a microphone or find friends or date or buy a car, that it behooves brands, it behooves pretty much anybody who's interested in engaging with customers to offer more than an article or a recommendation, but an invitation to come and engage offline. And that's kind of my new, to me, that's the paradigm shift, which is everybody knows now how to find something, but they don't know how to connect to something. And connecting, the most meaningful connections are ones that you can touch and see in front of you.
That's a really interesting thought. It's clearly right down what we were just talking about, which is les amis devant quite type events that used to go on, but they went on back then because you had no choice. I guess humans are humans. They need the interaction. You can't hole up on your computer and disengage yourself from society, because that's not who we are as humans. Which means that all this messaging that we get is diluted more and more with the more AI, with the more content, everything's getting diluted. And I referenced back in the day, if I sent, I can highlight them, maybe only 15 years ago, 10, if I had a really good Napa cab that was a legitimate deal, that was a legitimate overrun, legitimate inventory stuck in the warehouse, not being able to be sold, and I put it out there for, let's say, $9.99, I had a reasonably high level of confidence I would sell 10,000 bottles in one email. For a couple of reasons. One, they would open every email. Everybody got my emails because there wasn't any spam back then, and it was a legit deal. If I sent that same exact offer today with my old company, maybe I would have sold 5-10 cases, maybe, because that's the email side's being diluted. The messaging I get on my phone is being harassed. I'm not competing against other wine companies anymore. I'm competing against Kim Kardashian and all the other messaging I'm getting, because you only get so much time. As humans, we only have nanoseconds to decide what we're going to do with that information and move on. And so I think that has to break somehow.
It will.
I think it just has to, this is too much volume.
I think Les Amis de Vin is something that should be brought back. Anything that was something in the past that was about hosting events, engaging with people. Think Tupperware parties. I mean, there is a necessity now for this. And there is just look at travel. Just travel as an example. Record travel around this country. Record attendance to concerts. Record attendance to sports events. There is a reason for it. The reason is there is a deep desire to connect. And so I believe that while we all can't own the Oakland A's or, the Giants or, be Taylor Swift, there is a larger message in my mind, which is, as we see these trends and we see people making these massive efforts and at a huge expense to get out and touch and talk, we as brands that are digitally enabled must find that connection with customers in the offline world. And they're listening to you online. They hear you. They just want you to meet with them, to offer them an opportunity to connect offline. That's what I believe.
It's an interesting thought, because this company grew from 1984 to 2007. And in 2007, I stopped them because the acquisition costs got out of reach. But for those 23 years, the sole successful methodology to acquire customers was a handshake at a show. And so we weren't testing graphics or messaging online. We weren't testing the database of people we were sending to. We weren't testing the AI. We weren't testing anything. We were testing the crowd that would show up at either a boat show or a gun show or a home improvement show, which was very successful. Yeah. Or the wine tasting pavilion at the LA County Fair. 1.5 million people walked through. The last year, in 1996, I shouldn't say these dates because I sound like an old guy.
but I will tell you, this is they're going back. And they're going back in record numbers. And they're finding out
is that
about
part of the
these
collective?
Things. It is. So part of the collective is understanding the intersection of digital and physical, right? And taking that information to an industry that really for thousands of years lived offline in many ways and connected. Part of adult beverage and wine in general is about the relationships you build in the physical world. that moment that you have at the table where you're, talking about family, eating a beautiful food, eating some beautiful food and just having this like very emotional moment in many ways. It is very difficult to express that emotion digitally. It is. And
Impossible.
I mean, it can be done in a didactic, right? It can be done in a video, like all of your podcasts help us understand, help us connect more to a product, to a wine, to the winemaker, their thinking, their intentions. But there is nothing like sitting around a table and talking about wine. There is nothing like going to an event where you are around other people who have the same interests and affinity as you around wine or around just celebration. And so it really is about taking digital has uncovered this incredible opportunity for us to connect with customers and shoppers in a way that we never have in terms of getting their attention, in terms of like, hey, look at me. But the finish of that, which we thought was all digital acquisition, digital, and it is, there is a portion of that, which is their customers who are just going to buy online. They don't want to have a relationship offline. But the majority now, we see they want relationships offline. But it needs to be linked to what they learn online. So there's a direct.
Well, yeah, that's where you, like you're saying, is you said earlier, you go there first. I went there first to see how to clean this Lalique lamp.
Oh, I love that.
But eventually, I know some of that stuff is great.
Yeah.
But eventually, it's that connection. And it reminds me of when I shifted out of that handshake sale. And I'm going to tell you, my acquisition cost, you'll love this.
Tell me.
In 1996 at the LA County Fair was $9. I got 1,000 customers in 20 days for $9 a person.
I believe you.
I got that money back in the first shipment, right?
Yeah.
But that climbed to 150 by the time I was done in 2007.
Yeah.
But in order to replace that, what I thought was that connection, because that handshake means so much, it still does. You can Zoom all you want with somebody. This is an example of what you're saying. But then when you meet them, it's a different relationship. It changed. Like I was entertaining this woman down in Laguna Beach who manages some stuff for me down there. I'd never met her. It was all online. It was all emails. And I was telling my secretary, I think maybe we're going to change. Well, I finally went down there last week to meet her. And I came back. She says, what do you want to do? I said, I'm not going to change. Well, she's a nice woman. And we had a great conversation. She knows what she's talking about. And so that relationship was established because we met each other. But when I stopped doing the direct mail stuff and got into mostly digital, I tried to replace that relationship with a video of me sitting at the desk and talking, sincerely and honestly. And every person that signed up for the club or got a gift got this email from me with a video of me talking to them about, what was going to happen, thinking that would replace the relationship. But it didn't really. I mean, it did in the beginning, but not at the end.
In the beginning, I don't think you should forget, in the beginning, it did. It did. When we were all first learning about the internet and all of these applications and software were making it easier for us to connect. But I think what we have learned especially over the last 4 years is that the physical connection is the heart of who we are as humans. And to be an amazing digital marketer, you have to understand the physical connection.
To connect the dots, then, you're not just in the alcohol sector. You're in all sectors.
We are. Well, in beverage. And beverage is our focus.
In beverage.
So we will do kind of, our interest really is in the wellness space. And we're looking at different products that really are centrally themed around, just being added value to your life. Great tasting, energetic, natural ingredients, because we just see really, just as women, and you asked, it's an all-female collective. We're all women. What makes us different? Well,
I get on your website.
we make the majority of the purchasing decisions in this country, as you well know. I'm sure Sandra would agree with me on this.
Yes.
We like to stop our
I'm not
husband.
allowed to make those decisions.
and we have our share of wallet is growing, and women have a desire and an interest in wellness that is unique and is a different point of view than I think perhaps maybe the other sex brings to the table. And so I think that, our perspective is that we as women understand at a very base level what women are looking for in specific beverage drinks outside of adult beverage. Now go into adult beverage, into wine specifically, where we have a lot of experience. We understand intimately what women are looking for in wine. Sometimes it aligns with the male cohort, and sometimes it does not. But in general, women are looking for products that they can believe in and that they feel connected to. And that's really like the bottom line. They don't explore as much as a male cohort in wine, which I know you know this very well. And it's not because they lack the confidence, which has always been what everyone in wine has said, that women just don't have the confidence in, trying all kinds of wines. It's not really that. It really is, they tend to have I find women have palates that are softer than male palates, and they look for wines that have a specific profile. And when they find something they like, they just stick with it. It's just it.
There's no question. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to stump Sandra with a Syrah of some form, whether it's Australian, domestic, or French. And every time she stops me. She goes, "What is this?" I go, "Oh my God, how did you figure that out?" It wasn't that she knew it was Syrah, but she knew it wasn't that she didn't like it, or that it wasn't the profile she was looking for. I mean, she's a Bordeaux varietal girl all the way. But is that, so connect the dots, sort of, was that spawned at the water cooler at VWE amongst the women there? Sort of like we're having this conversation?
It wasn't, we always had ongoing, being Terry Wheatley, who's the founder and the general partner of Connect the Dots, has been in the industry for over 40 years. And working with her, so much of my work was inspired by, she would always ask me to think deeper. What is it, like, as a marketer, how do I reach out to customers? How do I engage with them? How do I, what is it that is going to make a difference? What makes a difference when I talk to a customer? And so many times we talk about segmentation, we talk about, we would do we just would really talk a lot, and we care very much about what our customers like. And so we talk about it a lot. And then, over time, we're just like, it would be so nice if we could make our own brands and sell it to the customers that we know so well. And we just kind of throw it out there. And we never really took action until we all just kind of decided to leave at the same time. And Terry, just took some time to think about what she wanted to do. Jenna, who is one of the partners, who's the VP of marketing at BWE, just decided she just needed a break. And I was busy with my omni-channel events company that has been around for quite a few years, and which has been growing very in a crazy way.
Wow.
But also just thinking, I still want to stay, I love e-commerce. I love digital. I'm a software geek. I am a nerd at the highest level when it comes to tech. I'm a tech person first. The wine in adult bev is just like my medium in many ways. And Terry just reached out to us, and she's like, "I'm thinking about starting this company. I want it to be female focused. And I want it to have two parts. The first is an advisory where we only pick clients that we want to work with, not clients that we're pitching. Clients who know us from the industry and that we can really help. And the other part is where we do innovation and development, product development, and we bring products to market on our own. And it was just, I mean
that's a huge palette of things to tackle, and I want to have a conversation with you offline about a young girl who started a product here. She's launching it this next week, completely female based in its approach to the marketplace. I'm really proud of her. She's 19, and what she's been able to produce. The part that she doesn't understand is once I've got this product and it looks good and it tastes good and all that, but man, I got to find these people to buy it.
Right.
And you said something really important about this experiential part of this. And I think this is what I've hung my hat on the last few years. When Groupon started and people were looking for deals, that's when my direct mail results, actually the direct mail response rate maintained itself to a level that if the tenure of the customer had been what it was the years past, we would have done great. But the Groupon culture had created these bargain hunters and coupon redeemers that, caused our lifetime value to plummet. Yeah. And so we stopped doing those, and you had to go find something new. And I found this in the digital side too. And I think your events company is what's going to change things. And I, by the way, I did trademark Les Amis d'Event. Again, I own the trademark.
It's
I have
beautiful.
The website. And I had ambitions of bringing it back on behalf of my father.
I love
we'll talk
it.
about that offline.
The crest is gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
But what I found early on with the, and you're talking about being a digital geek, and we look at the numbers, and we look at the response rates, and we look at the lifetime value, and we look at the metrics, and we look at the the conversion rate, and we look at the how long the bounce rate, and all those things that come along with digital marketing. And what I found, and I think that connect the dots is fighting this, is a digital marketeer, a consultant, can be successful by moving the needle, let's say a point. I don't care what the metric is, they move the point. Yeah. They moved a point, 2 points, 5 points. And that resulted in an extra $10,000 in sales for your company. But they moved it. They were successful in getting better response from whatever method you were using.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it cost you $20,000 to get that 10. And so the digital consultant can say, yeah, we were successful. I don't know what you're complaining about. It's like, yeah, but you don't have the same, my bottom line metric is revenue and how much it cost me to get that revenue.
Oh, that.
Are you?
Profitability.
Yeah, right?
What are you talking about?
So connect the dots philosophy is a blend of these things, keep an eye on the metric, but also managing this experiential part of the sale?
Absolutely. I mean, listen, I think you're saying it well. Digital marketing can move the needle, but it cannot change. It's not inception. Mm-hmm. It isn't. And so inception for a product like adult beverage, wine in particular, is the moment. And inception only happens offline.
That's it. That's a great way to put it. You think wine is excluded from, or is it actually probably more plagued with the headwinds of marketing, digital marketing, and such a small percentage actually drink wine or want to experience wine? Is it plagued with that minimal amount of people?
I think that what's plaguing the industry is innovation. True innovation, not like coming up with another label with a critter. I'm talking about sustainable packaging. I'm talking about, making it easy. I'm talking about ingredients and wellness. I mean, all of the elements that, if you look at RTDs, just as a comparison out there, they're killing it. You look at, canned RTDs. I'm not going to name one in particular, but their lead is, I'm X amount of calories and I'm good for you. And, we're seltzer based, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. We know that there's crap in that can. And that the only, the best organic, most natural stuff, wellness, oriented, alcohol-based product you can put in your body is wine. Bottom line. Bottom line. And so why we are not owning that message as an industry, why we are not actually saying it's 100 calories for this can or this package or this, the refusal of the industry to shift into this area of innovation is the limitation of the industry in my mind. You see people out there trying, and it will eventually happen. But I believe that the wine industry is just it's late to the game on this side of things. Now, a lot of people say, well, there's cannabis and there's, other things, and it's key, and people are drinking less, and it's dry January, blah 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 blah. I will tell you, I have younger kids who are of drinking age, and they're as interested in enjoying something to drink as we were as teenagers.
What you just said, and I couldn't write talking points fast enough because we're going to have to do this again because there's so much to uncover. Because there are people on LinkedIn that talk about innovation, and innovation can be used as just this cloud. You talk about cloud-based ideas. It's just, well, you're not innovating enough, But then you go to the market and you put your camera on a bottle of 19 crimes, and the guy comes alive and tells you the crime he did. Is that innovation? I don't know. Define innovation. And I wrote a little article the other day. I put it on LinkedIn. And I said, history has my back on this, because I think all of this stuff is just blips on the graph. It's 10,000 years old. We've been drinking it forever. It's the same as it was 10,000 years ago. And, they found the shoes of the guy making the wine in the Armenian cave at Adeni. And we were selling bottles and James wine coolers in my dad's wine shop, and they're gone, or they're, much less there. And I think all of these things are just humans jumping into the fray, trying to make a buck. And I can't tell you how many people I've had on my show with this unique idea. I got to tell you, Jessica, this is a unique idea. We're going to put wine in a 200 ml bottle because nobody can drink a whole bottle, which is wrong. Unfortunately, that's where I'm at these days. But so I just, my romantic view of this is it's a blip. Mm-hmm. And my practical view is, we got to make a buck, and so we got to sell some wine, and these are the things that people are buying. Mm-hmm. You made that's one of the points. Another point you made about RTDs, which is fascinating. These Gen Z X LMNOPs that talk about biodynamic and talk about organic foods, and they shop at Whole Foods, but they drink White Claw, which is nothing but crap.
It is just, so. and it's like, why? Why is the wine industry not jumping in there and being like, stop the process?
Well, but you were there. You were in the crux of it all. You were in one of the biggest wine conglomerates in America. I mean, and we're going to run out of time here because it's already 50 minutes, and we'll have to do this again. But Vintage Wine Estates was huge. Wink was huge. $250 million in sales, direct to consumer, all of it sold for $10 million because they couldn't make $1 on any of it, like a Ponzi scheme. I mean, you were right there.
Right.
How could innovation not occur in the halls of those places?
Because the people who were in there, they were they could not. They were single-minded in their obsession of conforming into whatever the industry had, and just reselling that in a different way, right? Just building a new channel, establishing in the industry that there is a new channel, and this channel is going to dominate, right? Do you remember? It's like, that's why, at WSA, you couldn't go in there because they were you're trying to steal my business, right? And on some level, it was understood that was happening because of all of the roadblocks that the wholesalers were putting up. That was that time. There's nothing wrong with that time.
I'll buy that.
There was nothing wrong with that time. It's just the world has changed. And quite frankly, I just think that part of the rejiggering of our industry is that we do need to listen to what the consumer wants. I'm not saying that you get rid of the 750 ml, that's always going to be the name, that is always going to be it. But we have to find a way to connect with consumers in this way that that will lend itself to long-term wine drinkers, because we're not doing that very well. We're not handing it down very well. The only thing we're handing down well is what grandparents are giving their grandkids.
I'm going to leave it at that today. Fascinating conversation,
Yes.
and we had so much to talk about.
I know, so much.
But we'll do it again.
Love to.
And we'll continue that thought process, because it annoys me what I read from people, and I want to counter them, but I don't want to get into an argument online, so I don't do it. So
We'll just do it over here.
So we'll do that. Such a pleasure to see you again.
You too.
And thank you for taking the time this morning.
Yeah.
And we'll reconnect soon.
Looking forward to it.
Cheers. Thank you for listening to Wine Talks with Paul Kalamkarian. Don't forget to subscribe, because there's more great interviews on their way. Folks, have a great time out there in the wine world. Cheers.